This podcast could potentially have adult language, adult themes, definitely drinking, and possibly the possibility of sexual content. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to Drinking with Authors. I'm your host, Erica Lance. My co-host today is the fantastic Danielle Orsino. And our guest today is October Santerelli. Woo! Woo! Okay, let's talk about what we're drinking. So in old school Drinking with Authors swag, you can tell I've used this a lot. By the way, October, you get swag for being on the show. So yeah, we're all about.
We're fancy.
Yes, we're super fancy in our, they're really durable plastic cups. I'm just going to say.
I'm excited.
What am I drinking? Oh, I'm drinking.
What are you drinking?
I know. I'm drinking vodka and grapefruit juice. And to be super bougie, I have a beach plum La Croix as well.
Wow.
Yeah, no, super. So I thought I had different juice because I was going to make a screwdriver and it's grapefruit juice and not orange juice. And I was like, fuck it, it's going in the cup. I don't give a shit. Here we go. So Danielle,
nice.
What are you drinking?
I'm not that fancy. I'm drinking just a chai latte out of my Lady Penelope cup because Penelope was in here a little bit ago squeaking her ball and I had to kick her out. So I thought I would drink it out of Lady Penelope's cup.
Ooh, Lady Penelope, she's adorable.
Yes.
Fantastic. October, what are you drinking?
I made a lemon berry mule.
Ooh.
So it's vodka and muddled blueberries. And then instead of ginger ale, I put in a sun-kissed berry lemonade soda. So it's like blue.
It's very blue and super fancy.
It is.
Wow.
It's really easy.
You're even drinking it out of a copper cup, which if you see the YouTube, you can see that. But wow, okay. I'm impressed.
Okay.
Call me impressed.
Yeah, I was
okay.
going to say that just topped us.
Yeah, it did. It totally. I'm just going to go back to my really cheesy Drinking with Authors swag.
Yeah, my mother taught me well.
Yeah. You showed
so
up.
October, for anybody out here in the world that doesn't know what you write, what do you write?
I am primarily a fantasy author, but I've published in other genres as well. I've written YA, sci-fi, and historic romance, and I also write comics, scripts for comics. So I kind of dabble in a lot of different areas.
So when did you start writing?
I started a million years ago. Basically, as soon as I found out writing was a job you could still have, I started writing, and that was 7th grade. So I was like 12 or 13 years old. Yeah, it took me a while to figure out that was a job you could still have. I don't know why, but for the longest time, I thought that all authors had already written their books and died. And so all the new books were just new to me. I just found them now. And so my teacher, we did this little poetry unit. And then she gave me back my little poetry collection that's stapled with the little crayon drawings and everything. And on the front, it was like, this could be professional. And I was like, excuse me, what? I want to do that. And then it was over. My parents were dismayed.
They were like, not going to be a lawyer or a doctor.
Nope, I'm going to be a writer.
I absolutely want to just have a little collection of stories called I Told My Parents I Was going to Be a Writer. And like just the reactions to that particular communication going out into the universe, because some parents are like, that's really cool, but the majority of them are like, that's not a real job, that you're not going to make money. What are you going to fall back on? Go do something else. So I think we should just have a collection called What Happened When I Told My Parents I Wanted to Be a Writer.
That's the next anthology, Erica. Write that down.
I should. I'm going to write it down now. What happened when it? So if I don't, this vodka is going to kick in, and I'm not going to remember it.
Paper and a pen. That's what we'll call the anthology.
Okay, I can actually write all the words too. That's terrible. If somebody saw what I was writing right now, they're just sounds. Okay. So let's talk about the first time being published and stuff like that. So what was the first thing you got published?
The first thing I ever got published was actually it's a little short story that I wrote in high school. I titled it The Path, and I entered it into a competition. for a magazine, and I won 3rd place in the short story competition. I have no idea what the magazine's name is anymore, and I have no idea where that story is at, but it does exist somewhere. And the first thing I published post high school was Jaculpo, which is a historic romance story featuring Leonardo da Vinci and his boyfriend Jaculpo. And that one's published in the Hold Your Fire anthology from Word Fire Press. And it's a charity anthology where proceeds go to scholarships towards a writing conference.
Very cool.
Very nice. That's cool.
That is awesome. I love Leonardo da Vinci and his boyfriend. That is awesome. Okay, so let's take a journey to your first fiction novel.
Yeah.
Big one. Size matters. So what's happening with that?
So my book, City of Day, it's the first book in the Nightfall trilogy. And that book is coming out February 23rd. So by the time this airs, it will already be out. And oh gosh, the journey for this book has been so long. I think the first iteration of it occurred in 2018.
Wow. Oh,
yeah,
this has been a while.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But then I wrote the whole book from the perspective of the wrong character. Like I wrote the whole book. I finished the manuscript and I was like, the side character's cooler and more important. And so I had to go back and completely rewrite the book.
Well, how did you come to that conclusion that the side, like what made you go, oh no, gotta go back?
He was just more interesting and his arc was more interesting than the main character. She's still in the book. Mila is still in the book and she's the secondary POV. But the bulk of the story, the important parts of the story needed Thislin's point of view. And I didn't have his point of view in that book at all. He was the one who should start the story. Like he's the one who has more experience with the world that I built. In chapter 1, they're murder ghosts. They kill people. And he's the one who sees the ghosts, and Mila doesn't see the ghosts for like half the book or more.
Oh, yeah. No.
Yeah. I was like, I wrote it from the wrong character's perspective. I just got to go back a little bit further. So that was an adventure, and it all started with Sinbad. So, you know.
I'm like, okay, so what made you, first of all, you said a word, which is trilogy. That's my French interpretation of that word. I'm not French, and that was a horrible depiction of a French interpretation. I'm well aware.
It wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. I'll let it go.
Thank you, Danielle. But there are French people out there that will be like, stop doing that, which is fine. It's also when I do my English accent, the same thing occurs, so it's cool. Unless I'm at a Ren fair, and then I can totally.
Yes.
So, what made you decide this is only going to be 3 books?
When I first wrote the outlines for them, I took the overall story that I wanted to tell and I broke it down into 3 acts, and each book is an act. So there is one whole plot for this. I don't foresee it breaking out into another novel. I could be surprised, but I'm not planning on it.
Until your fans say something. So famous last words, my friend. Famous last words.
I do plan to come back to this universe again, like this setting and the kingdom that it's set in, either prequels or afterwards.
Novellas, something.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll be surprised as these books go out, and I think Danielle can attest to this, who people end up enjoying and what you think will happen and fan demand for the continuation. Not that you have to write to fans. Like there are some people that write to fans or write to sales. Well, the people that write to sales, I think, are a little bit terrible because sometimes it's just throwing words on a piece of paper and you can tell they're not as invested in the book as they used to be in previous books. I think we've all experienced that with certain series, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then you have the people that write, do pay attention to what their fans want and figure out ways to continue storylines or continue universes or whatever, because the fans do fall in love with characters and people. And, when it ends, especially in 3 books, which sounds like a lot, but it's not a lot. then they're like, but what happened? And then they want more, regardless of how you guys think you ended the book. I say that from a fantasy thing, but
yeah, I'm writing book 2 right now. I'm almost finished with book 2, and I just now in this moment realized that I'm over halfway through this story. And that's a lot of realization right there. I'm like, oh no, I love my characters and I'm gonna miss them in one more book.
yeah, we'll see what happens.
Then you
when
probably
you're doing
still
book
have it in
3.
you.
My friend will have that conversation going, so how many books are in this series again? And you're gonna be like, 7 books.
So many.
If you still love them, then you still have more in you. It's when you get to that book where you're like, oh my God, thank God it's done, that you're like, okay, you gotta like just move on.
Please walk away if that happens, because you're not going to generate good stories at all. So the journey, how are you being published for this trilogy? I'm going to keep saying it like that.
Yeah, my trilogy is coming out through Falstaff Books. Publishing.
Oh.
John picked it up at Dragon Con a couple years ago now. So.
Very cool. That's exciting. So traditional publisher.
I know.
So what has that been like, that journey? Because it's a little different than submitting stories to anthologies and short story contests and things like that. None of that's bad. I'm just saying it's very different when you're giving gigantic manuscript to publisher.
Yeah, it was kind of a little bit terrifying at the point that I sent it in for the Falstaff had unagented submissions. So at the point when I sent it in for that, I was querying it as well, and paying my dues and getting my rejections as I do. And I actually ended up hearing from John and Tor at the same time. Yeah, and both of them were interested. So they both put in full manuscript requests at the same time. And then it came down to the fact that I had written this as a trilogy. So the end of book 1 is the lead up to book 2. Because I broke it into that 3 acts. And
Empire Strikes Back ending. I understand. I think that's important.
Yeah. Tor couldn't guarantee that all 3 books would come out. And I didn't want to rewrite half my book to change the ending. So I decided to go with Falstaff instead for now. And
that was a
totally understand that.
Yeah, that was a very smart choice, because there are even very well-known authors, and I don't say that like we're less than them, right? But there are very well-known authors that are not guaranteed. Melinda Snodgrass is one of them. I think I want to say it was Tor or Bane. I think. Don't hold me to that, Tor or Bane. If that wasn't it, I've been drinking. But they put out 2 of a trilogy of her books, and they put them in the wrong categories and mismarketed them. So when she put out 2 and it was having such a problem, she finished 3 and they were like, we're not going to put that out. This is how fans get super duper mad. I mean, sometimes it is the author not finishing writing whatever they're writing. But a lot of times it's these publishers that go, yeah, just give me one, where in the past, believe it or not, publishers were much more into series based and let's see where it will go. They were willing to take on the series and
now
2 or 3 or 4 books of the series to make sure that like this would go somewhere. Now they're like 1, and if it's not spectacular, we're not giving you a 2. And then
they're doing first right of refusal.
Yeah,
that's what the bigger. I was accepted by one of the big 3, but they're metaphysical offshoot. And that's what they did to me with my series, was they said, we'll take the first one with the first right of refusal to the second. So they did not, and my first book, they asked me to divide it in half too. And I said, well, then I'll end it on a cliffhanger. And they went, yeah, that's fine. They said, maybe we'll take the second, maybe we won't. And I'm like, but you're asking me to divide it in half with not guaranteeing the second. And they were like, yep. They kind of just shrugged at me, and I was like, oh, okay. And I didn't go with them because it's the same feeling. Why start a series and not know what's going to happen?
So what made you decide, oh my gosh, what made you decide to go that route and to query and to do that whole thing?
A lot of it, honestly, is being a little bit lazy. I
Okay.
don't want to wear
I
one.
was gonna say query is hard.
Well, I meant for like the whole of my career.
Mm.
I know how much work goes into indie books. You're finding editors, and you're your own art director, and you have to find somebody to do all the formatting if you don't want to learn how to do that yourself. And there's extra marketing steps, and there's so much work that goes into that. And I just want to write. So my decision to go traditional to begin with is I just want to write the books.
Well, you're going to have marketing regardless. You know
Yeah.
that, right?
Yeah, I'm still marketing.
Yeah,
Okay.
marketing regardless. But no, I understand that. I mean, authors just want to write. It's funny you say that, because that's the premise of my publishing company is let's get authors actually writing and not doing all the other stuff. But it's interesting that you have that view, because it's not I don't know how to do it, it's I just don't want to do it. So let me go that route. Did you have a time frame set up for yourself if your book didn't get opted? Or were you just going to keep trying? Like, did you have like, this was my goal, and if this doesn't happen, I'm going to do X?
I kind of was like, well, I'll keep querying this one, but I was already writing the next book. Not book 2 in the series, but like the next book.
No, separate project.
So my idea is to just keep the wheel spinning. Something will catch. So if I put one out to query, I can keep querying that one as long as I want while I work on the next book, and then start querying that book and the other book and write the next book, right? So I didn't have any set timeline. It would get picked up when it get picked up. If I got picked up by somebody because of one of the other books that I wrote afterwards, I would still have that book to be like, oh, by the way, here's another completed manuscript. Enjoy, you know?
So do you have another completed manuscript?
I do.
Okay. I feel like you were hiding that. I feel like you were
Yeah,
not
it was
quite,
like back pocket.
yeah, there was like a
like,
subtle
wow.
inference of it. And you're like, I'm not going to actually mention it all the way. Maybe they won't notice. So,
But it's here.
yeah.
I
So I
haven't
noticed.
it isn't gone anywhere yet. I haven't queried it. I'm doing my editing pass right now. But I am so in love with it. It's an idea that my friends gave me when we were all messing around, and those make sometimes the best stories. So it's based on an old French fairy tale called
Which one?
And it's about a sorceress, obviously, who lives in a house, and there's like flashing lights, and everybody's all, gosh, she's probably up to no good in there. And the king's like, I set a bounty, so go and figure out what it is, and I'll give you all this gold. And everybody tries to break in, but her magical defenses like zap people with lightning and drop them into pit spikes and, you know, all these horrible things. And then this one shepherd is like, well, I'll do it. And he goes up and he knocks on the door. And she opens the door and is like, hey.
Oh, hey, you
What's
know,
up?
very cool.
Yeah, so I'm working on that one and a bunch of other retellings of fairy tales. My difference between, you know, regular old retellings of the fairy tale and this is that every single one of my stories is LGBTQ plus. So I've made changes to all of them, but kept the themes the same to make the queer elements, you know, really mesh with the story.
No, that's awesome. I
Very
think
cool.
that's fabulous. So, are you intending, so you're going to do and I hate to say the word series, but a multi-book of different fairy tales.
Yeah, not a not quite series.
A not quite series, but you know,
A collection.
I actually,
Yeah, collection's a good word for it.
collection, I
There you
like that. Because I think you know, having read several retellings of fairy, I think they're brilliant. And especially when you take a lot of different elements and don't tell the same exact story that the story has been. Because there's some great pieces to these stories. And especially if you go true to some of the older fairy tales that were like stay in your fucking lane fairy tales. So that's what fairy tales were. They were stay in your fucking lane fairy tales.
Yeah, I'm leaning into the, like I said, the original themes. Like Cinderella is still going, oh no, will the prince like me? And Beauty and the Beast, they're still sitting there like, oh no, will we fall in love? Somebody needs to be stuck in a castle, Sleeping Beauty still goes to sleep.
Old school.
Yeah.
Yeah, how is Sleeping Beauty the star of that story? I'm just saying, like, she's out within minutes of the fucking thing starting. So why is it centered around Aurora? I mean, don't get me wrong, not your Aurora, Danielle, but this Aurora.
No problem.
Different Aurora.
Different Aurora. Got it.
Different Aurora. But seriously, I remember watching that going, this is really a story about Maleficent and the prince.
Damn straight, it's Maleficent.
Yeah, seriously, that is what this story is about, because fucking Sleeping Beauty's asleep through most of it. So
those cheekbones.
Oh my God, the cheekbones. I love finding out that the reason they cast her daughter in that is because every other child they put in front of her was terrified.
Was scared.
And her daughter was the only one that didn't freak the fuck out. So they were like, I guess this is what we're doing.
Yep. Angelina Jolie was great in that, man.
Yeah, whatever worked.
I agree. I agree. Okay, so you want to be a writer. What does that mean to you?
Oh gosh, it just means telling stories. Like any kind of story, all kinds of stories. I consume them and I want to tell them. So like video games and movies and television and stage plays and books and like any method that you can convey a tale, I want to be good at it. And that's the only thing that like mattered to me since I was 12 years old, is being a really good storyteller. So I write to tell the tale the way I want to tell it, right? I want to hit these emotional notes. I want to get this point across. I want to make my reader feel here and think here. And that's all that I'm thinking about when I'm working, is I've got an idea and I need to give it to you as pristinely as possible.
That's awesome. How has it been? Have you gotten a lot of reviews or feedback from the public at large about your stories and stuff?
I have gotten
short stories and anthologies. It's a little different sometimes on feedback, that
I actually do have a novella. It's about 60,000 words that is published with David Brin, Academy Award-winning author.
David Brin has been on our show. We're fans of David Brin, vice versa.
Yeah, David and I wrote a book together. So
very cool. 60,000 is not a novella, by the way. For David, it probably is, but that's an actual book.
That's
so a novella is like 25,000 words, maybe 35. So well done on writing a book.
Thank you.
Yes.
That one is out, and I've gotten some feedback on that one, and I got feedback that surprised me. So that, like, most of it.
In what way?
I think I'm really good at setting. I've never once been complimented on my setting. I am always complimented on my character writing, and I always feel like I'm struggling with that. So like, I don't know.
Interesting.
I can't interpret my own writing anymore. I'm this close to giving up. Like,
how do you deal with reviews? Like, are you somebody that's like, screw the reviews, or do you go in and like read them? And are you like, let me dissect these?
I've read a couple of them. I don't read a lot of them, I admit. I like the ones that like pop up on Goodreads every now and again. But for the most part, I didn't tell it to get reviewed, right? It goes back to why I write in the first place. I just did it to tell that story.
Okay.
So once the book is out, I'm like, and that's done. Next one. And I'm not so focused on the book that's currently out, which is probably a bad thing. But
no, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Reviews are for readers. Reviews can help if you want to see how readers interpreted your work, but you have to stand 10 feet back from that interpretation of your work, because it is through a lens of the internet versus somebody contacting you directly and saying how wonderful they think you are, or what you've done to change their life, or things like, or even coming up to you at a convention and telling you how great your book is. Now, generally, people do not come up to you in events to bitch. Generally, there are the Karens and the Bryans, that's what I call them, out there that will go out of their way to be buttheads. I hope that happens to me at some point. I'm super excited about that. because I'm gonna fucking Wendy's Twitter their shit, but generally you don't have that happen. But on the internet, you have that filter of they're doing it from a place of anonymity and things like that. But sometimes I think reviews, especially as you start getting a lot of them, can be very good in how an audience is interpreting your work. Because
that's the part that I like, is seeing how they've taken the story and taken it apart. In gosh, what was it, 10th grade? I entered a poetry contest and I won honorable mention. And my teacher, my language arts teacher at the time, was like, perfect, I'm gonna pull you for a day. And she put my poem up and had each class interpret the poem and try and guess what I was writing about. And then she asked me what I was writing about. And so they got to see the disconnect between what an author is writing about and what the interpretation ends up being like in real time. And so did I, which was so fascinating, because it was a poem that I wrote about a leaf and a stick and a toy boat on a little river. And that was literally all I wrote. And they were sitting there like, it's the stages of life and grief. I'm like, it's a stick. Like, so that's one of my favorite parts.
I think that's interesting because it's true. It's the perception and how they felt about it. What you can't do is take it personally, how they felt about it.
And I think that my method of like writing and telling stories, where I'm just trying to convey it, you know, right? Once I've told the story, it's told and I can't go back and change it. So at that point, I'm less concerned about like, I mean, I don't want to say that I'm not concerned about reader interpretation, but I'm less concerned about it.
You're detached.
Yeah, it's less personal.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
It's true. You just have to kind of be prepared, you know, for that part of it. If you decide to continue down the review track, is what people thought. But at the same time, a lot of times I think people can cause you to fall back in love with your writing.
That's true.
And fall back in love with your stories and stuff like that because of what it means to them.
Yeah, and I have the artist problem, where as soon as I finished a book, I have gotten better at writing. And so now I hate the book. Every time it comes out, like story comes out or whatever, I'm like, oh, what was I thinking? But at the time I was like really excited and proud about it. And so, you know, the artist problem, I got better and now I'm not as invested. So I've had people come up to me and they're like, I really liked that. I really liked this element. I really like this. And I'm like, okay, so it's not bad. And I need to stop beating up on myself for putting that out.
You do. Have you ever seen the interview Anne Rice gave before she passed, but she was talking about Interview with the Vampire and how that was the best writer she was at that time. So she wouldn't want to change it because that's how great she was at that time. Yeah. And not like, oh my gosh, Anne Rice is a great writer, because I went back after she passed away and re-listened to Interview with the Vampire. And there's some great stuff about it. There's some stuff where if you read her later stuff, you can go, she's a better writer now, because we all get better. Like by the end of the book, we're all better than the first chapter we wrote. But you have to keep going and know that, and not get, her biggest thing was don't get stuck on it. You're going to be a better writer. Like you'll never fix that problem.
A while ago, I watched a YouTube video for artists, like drawing artists. But the message of the video was finished is better than perfect. And I needed that pep talk really badly at the time, took it to heart. And now I purposely write really bad first drafts and really short first drafts. I just have to get through the story. And then I do a big rewrite where I actually, sit there and craft it the way I want it. Because now I know where the characters are going and I know what I want them to end up doing. But I have to write a really bad first draft first. I have to suck before I can get better.
That's a good way to put it.
So
it's actually, I like that.
Let's talk about your writing environment. What is your optimal writing environment? Like, where do you thrive?
I thrive in a basement.
That
Not
could
joking.
happen.
I have a really nice basement, but I have this little basement apartment, and I have this perfectly sized nook. My desk fits wall to wall. And I sit there with like a little bit of art over the top, and I've got some poster pegboards over there. And I light candles. I have a candle problem. Like I light a candle when I start to work and I turn on music, but I literally have like a dozen different candles on my desk
Oh
at
my
any given
goodness.
time. One of them is lit right now. And
Wow. Are there particular smells that you tend to gravitate towards?
not really, actually. I've got a bunch of different scents, and it's kind of a mood thing for me, where I'm like, all right, which candle am I going to use today? Well, I'm writing a fight scene, so I need something spicy, like it depends on what I'm
Okay, I can
writing,
see
where I'm
that.
at, what my mood is when I go into it.
What kind of music do you put on? Because you said music.
I do. I have a playlist of Narnia soundtracks, and that is what I put on. And that is the only thing I put on, and that is the only time I listen to the Narnia soundtrack. But it's
How did you stumble that that was a great idea?
I went on YouTube and was looking up ambient music loops to just put on in the background while I was working. And there was one that was ambient winter sounds and Narnia. And I found that one worked the best. And so I went on Spotify and I found the Prince Caspian soundtrack and the Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe soundtrack, and I assembled my own little list of Narnia instrumental music. And it's like the way that they are not ever too fast or not ever too slow, and they don't crescendo too much, and right, like there's just this weird perfect middle line that Narnia soundtracks walk that's turns my brain on. Yes.
Right. No, it's whatever works. Somebody actually just turned me on to this one. It's called Cryo Chamber. And so I write horror. And so they wrote horror. And it's called Cryo Chamber. And it's like this. It actually has a live loop thing that you can listen to, like live, but it is very kind of like, this one is called Mystical Winters Far Up North Dark Polar Ambient Mix, but it's very like dark and not like creepy. I have a whole other playlist for creepy, but it's just very like dark setting kind of music. But I think finding whatever like music works for you, and some authors are like, it has to be dead silent. I can't have it be dead silent because then I hear everything else going on in my house and I'm like, what was that? Because it could be haunted, or it could be dogs or cats, one of the other. It's fine, whichever it is, as long as you don't break shit, either one. And but I'll be like, what was that noise? What was this? And it's little noises, but I can hear them. And then I'm like, look at me getting distracted. Boop, boop, boop. I'm going upstairs to see what that noise was that I never find.
I'm an ADHD author, so I get that real hard.
So am I. Yep.
So what about I obviously COVID changed, I say obviously, but COVID changed a lot of things for a lot of us. I used to love to write in cafes, bars, things like that, because I loved the motion around me.
I used to get my best writing done in a cafe, and when the plague struck, everything got side railed for me really hard, and I had to completely relearn how to write. Because I was so reliant upon going to a cafe to write that when I was stuck in the silence of my own home, because I was high risk, I couldn't go out at all. I was lost, completely lost. So I actually started doing experiments on me and my other ADHD and a couple of autistic writer friends. And I was like, okay, guys, today we're going to be trying this. And they were like, okay. And I sort of like product tested our productivity in various ways and did research on why I couldn't start writing and how to get over that. And gosh, it took me like 6 months to get back to a point where I was writing consistently.
I think that's true for a lot of people. I think there's some people that still haven't gotten back to their jam. John Dover, he's been on the podcast a couple of times. I love him. He's a professional trumpet player as well. So weird fun fact, but he used to write in a bar, like sit at the bar and write in a bar. And that was his thing. Like he had a bar stool at this local bar and he would go and he would sit and all time, different times of day, different times of night, have this whole thing. And then that was like, nope, we can't do that anymore. Because I think he's in, I want to say Chicago or Boston. He was in a city that actually believed the plague existed. I say that because I was living in Florida during that time. And, we're not even going to get into that little political nightmare, but he was in a place that believed the plague existed. Ergo, everything got shut down. And then when things did reopen, it wasn't, you can go inside. It was, you can go sit like right out there, in the corner in an igloo by yourself. Same thing as being home, except for more expensive drinks. What about snacky poos? Are you a snacker when you write?
I am not. I have a water bottle by my side, but I take breaks to go get snacks on purpose, because otherwise I just won't move all day, because I will write all day. And then it's like I've forgotten to eat. I've hyper fixated so hard that I've forgotten to eat all day. It's 8 o'clock at night and I finally stop writing. And not only am I like, my butt hurts from sitting all day, but now I'm starving. And it all just happened at once. And like, so I set timers and I get up every hour and a half and I'll go and grab like a little thing, like a handful of trail mix, or go and grab one of my roommate's donuts. He always gets donuts.
That's a good roommate. It's a good roommate. Always. Are they good donuts or are they like Dunkin' Donuts donuts?
There's this place called Glimmers here in Colorado that is so good, and he gets the Glimmers stuff.
That's amazing. I think finding like a good donut place can make all the difference, because you can obviously, Krispy Kreme has its place, don't get me wrong, and you can eat too many of them. I've proven that, but in one sitting, but a good, really good donut place, especially ones with maple bacon donuts. I love maple bacon.
They've got really good meat.
You've never had a maple bacon donut, Danielle?
I've never had a Krispy Kreme.
Oh my God. I feel like I just have to keep reintroducing you into the world. I just don't understand.
I know.
I took her to Sonic for the first time. I was like,
yeah, that was a new experience. Never had Sonic.
They have really good shit.
I'm like, how is that possible? Okay, so you have done quite a few events. You were at DragonCon, that's how we met you.
Yep.
Let's talk about events. How did you get into doing those sort of things?
Well, I actually used to be a professional cosplayer in my early 20s. And then I started making more money working for my sponsor at the time as a vendor. So I swapped over to doing that full time rather than pro cosplaying. And then I was a convention vendor for long enough that like from then to now, I've done public speaking the whole time. I used to do speeches and panel presentations about how to pose for photographs, or 20 different ways to use a milk bottle for cosplay. I
was going to say, let's put that little, it's for cosplay and not for blowing up things. Yes.
Yeah. And then when I became a vendor, I did it once or twice at some conventions to, fill space, that they had extra space. So I'd apply, knowing I'd be at that con. When I started getting things published, when my writing started to pick up, I was like, great, I'll do it again. And I started out talking about sensitivity reading, which is technically my quote unquote day job. Sensitivity reading is where you read other people's manuscripts for minority content and make sure that it's respectful and add depth and update outdated terminology and all that sort of stuff. I'm one of the oldest sensitivity readers in the business. Wow. I started about 5 years ago, and it's such a new profession that 5 years in it makes me a veteran.
No, and I have a publishing company. I talk about it on the show, and we have a lot of LGBT authors, own voice authors, that sort of thing. but whenever somebody who is not in that particular vein, doesn't identify in a group like that, we have our readers that are sensitivity readers, just to make sure that whatever they're communicating is good and not offensive. And generally it's not intentioned offensiveness, it's unknowing offensiveness.
Yeah,
You know?
at the point that an author is seeking out a sensitivity reader, they're already, good at heart. The ones that really don't care won't get a sensitivity reader. So
What has that been like going into that? Because, obviously somebody's looking for it and goes, hey, I want you to do this, but do you still run into difficulty when you're trying to do corrections or things like that?
there have been a couple of times where I was worried about how an author would react to the information that I was giving them. There's a couple of authors where I did a sensitivity read and was like, I suggest that you make a change to this, and maybe you could do this here. And they were like, it's fine. And I was like, okay, why did you pay me? But I mean, like, I got paid, but okay. Like, but for the most part, I haven't had too much difficulty. I've only had to turn down one sensitivity read. I was terrified of one that this woman gave me a book, and it started out very heavily Christian themed. And I was terrified to finish that book. I was like, I don't want to know what the queer element in this story is. But it was actually this really beautiful story about like a Christian housewife who meets her daughter's gay best friend and completely changes her outlook on life and how she interprets her own faith. And I was like, okay, that's a really good book. And I was so afraid to start that one. I was so afraid that I'd have to be like, so this is bad. And it wasn't. It was awesome. For the most part, awesome. Yeah.
That's very cool. When you go to offer your services for that, is that something like you have your own website set up? How do you generally find work as a sensitivity?
Mine is mostly through word of mouth. And the conference Superstars Writing Seminar, where I started as a sensitivity reader, Kevin J. Anderson himself asked me to sensitivity read for him, and that was my very first one. Yeah, right. But
that's awesome.
I get a lot of traction through that and other conventions where I talk about being a sensitivity reader. It is on my website, but my website is mostly focused on my writing. That's what I'm hoping to transition to full-time eventually. Sensitivity reading does make a very good turnaround on monetarily, but writing's where my heart's at.
That makes sense. So what about so you have book 1 coming out, you've written book 2. When is that intended to come out?
That one's supposed to come out early 2024.
Okay, so you want to do writing full-time.
Yeah.
You must go faster.
I know.
So what is your that's my new line. I feel like I really should Jeff Goldblum back in the van and just get a meme of me going, must go faster.
Must go faster. You need a pillow or something.
Especially if you want to, do writing full time, it is about quantity, quality, but quantity, because that's backlist.
For the most part, I can't stop I can't move up the release dates for these because it's traditional, and traditional is a little sluggish. I am working, again, like I said, I'm always working on the next book. So as I'm writing the end of book 2, I'm editing this other manuscript. And as soon as that's done, I'm going to query it. So I'm planning on, and as soon as that one's out to query and that one's off to the publisher, I'm going to write the next book. So I am planning on moving faster. I can get, I think, about 4 books done in a year.
No, that would be brilliant.
Yeah, that's what I'm aiming for.
And you don't have an exclusivity contract with your publisher, so they don't have to take the next one. You could go wherever you want with the other series.
Yep.
Okay.
My publisher is actually really awesome about that. John is of the belief that if you land a bigger publisher than Falstaff, it's good for Falstaff's bottom line, because they'll go back and find your books that I've published with them. So he gets sales anyway if I get a better contract.
John Hartnett, he's been on the show before. He is a friend of Drinking with Authors as well. And one thing is where he landed on his traditional publishing contracts, because he was a published author before he started Falstaff Books. And we think very similarly in the publishing vein, because he has a situation where I don't think, if I recall correctly, so John, if you're listening, he cannot put out another full-length book within 6 months of his publisher putting out a full-length book, which they put out every 6 months. So he has to put out novellas, because it doesn't say that part of the contract, but he can't do the big books because it does say that in his contract. So, there's a lot of, we have an author, Mark Muncy, who had a contract with Bain, where right now they literally have, still to this day, first right of refusal on everything that he writes. Everything. They have first right of refusal.
Yeah, I think that having Falstaff as my publisher actually sets me up for a lot better success with bigger houses as well, because I'm like, I already have a publisher, so if I get a literary agent that's like, he can't give you that for all of the books, because he's got a different publisher already. I feel like that gives me a little bit of a better negotiating spot.
It definitely can. I would look for the mid-sized publishers though, because the big five, you're going to find a totally different experience than you have with Falstaff, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
With those. Okay. Danielle, do you have questions? I realize I'm just talking. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I was actually going to ask about the covers, and did you have a lot of say in them, or did you go in with a concept, or were they just like, hey, this is what we're thinking?
I went in with a concept, like a really rough concept. And it was like a hand holding a crystal ball with the city in the crystal ball, because it's city of day, and it would be daytime in that one. And then on the next cover, the hand's in a different position, but the orb is the city at nighttime, or city of night, I was like, that would be really cool. And they were like, we like that, but, and I was like, okay, but what? And they were like, we want to just do a painted cover, a full painted wrap cover. And I was like, well, I'm not going to say no to that. And so they've done the city, and as soon as it's painted during the daytime, it's going to be perfect. But right now it's still in the works. So.
Okay, very cool. Well, at least they gave you a say.
Yeah, they gave me the city, and that's what I wanted most. That was the focal point of the covers. So.
And so let's talk about cosplay, because our friend here, Danielle, is an avid cosplayer. I'm a cosplayer as well. We didn't touch on cosplay yet. And not often do we have all cosplayers on the show. All cosplayers, cosplayer here and there and everywhere. I mean, so what did you cosplay?
One of my most famous was, I did Anastasia from the Dream Sequence, and I won the most awards with that one. I did a pinup female Captain America dress that was super cute, 50s style, with the corset top. Oh, it was so pretty. And then I did Kid Loki long before the Loki TV show came out. Yeah, I did Spider-Man, I did Cinderella. I mostly liked making big fancy dresses because those are the most fun. I loved being Spider-Man. That one was a lot of fun too. I think half of it
Spider-Man's always fun.
Well, I think anytime you can wear a cosplay where your entire face is covered, it makes a huge difference, because we do cosplay where sometimes our face isn't covered at all, and sometimes did you do cosplay? Did you choose because those are ones you absolutely wanted to do, or how did you go about it?
I mostly just made whatever I enjoyed, whatever I was a fan of, and I've always been a big Spider-Man fan. And the Kid Loki one was with another friend who did the Siege Loki with the big horn helmet. That one was fun. The Captain America was part of a gown interpretations of the Avengers set, so that one was a whole bunch of us did that, and I just wore my Captain America a lot more than they wore their gown. after that because mine was comfy and theirs were like full length and yeah. So
I love I have a very good friend that I cosplay with, and I love cosplay. Like she did Louis and I did Lestat, like not the new interpretation, but the velvet with the gold. And her daughter did Claudia for us, and her daughter was like 6 at the time, which was brilliant because it was the right size of the human in the thing. We do things like that. Like we did 13 Ghosts, and we met Matt Lillard. Like we do it sometimes to go meet the celebrities that are going to be at conventions and show up dressed like their characters, which is
I met a lot of celebrities just by being a guest at conventions. Like so many of them, and like I still keep in touch with some of them, and it's a lot of fun.
Danielle, what have been your favorites? Because I've seen a couple of the ones you've done, but what are your favorite ones?
I love doing Harley. I just have a good time whenever I'm Harley Quinn. You know,
But
I want to say
the original game Harley Quinn and not the Suicide Squad, right?
Yeah, no, I do. I've done Batman the Animated Series and the full jester with the full hat. I've done that one a couple times, and that one I actually won an award with that one. Biggest awards I've won is when I've done the Gal Gadot Wonder Woman, and that one I've won money with that one. And then, but I love being Harley. I do the game versions. I've done Arkham Knights, Arkham Asylum, Harley, and Gotham Knights. I've done those, and I love being Harley. But let's see, when I did New York Comic Con 2018, I did Catwoman, and I had an artist actually just give me a bunch of prints because he was like, "You look like the way I normally draw Catwoman." He's like, "So just here," and he signed it and just gave it to me, and he was like, "There you go."
That's awesome.
And he's like, "Go have fun," and I'm like, "Done." And I walked away. The only one I finished the costume and made it was Vampirella. I just still don't have the guts to wear it. I'm done. I finished it. It's there. I just can't bring myself to wear it. I just I put it on and I'm like, maybe. And then I'm like, nah, nope, can't do it. Just
October,
one of those
still,
just can't.
Do you still cosplay?
Not so much, mostly because it is a pretty big demand on time. And I recently was diagnosed with a chronic illness that sucks up energy a lot faster than I have it. So I have to be really, really careful with my time.
No, that makes sense. That's unfortunate. I'm sorry to hear that.
I'm mostly glad that I got answers because this has been a problem for like 6 years. So, you know,
Oh,
the
That's always
diagnosis
good.
is the good part.
That's always good. That's always good. Okay. So what advice would you give authors out there?
My best advice is try it. I think that's my best advice because all the time I'm sitting there and I'm like, what if I did this instead? And then I kind of get frozen because I'm like, should I go the way I wanted to, or should I write that? I got over that by trying it. So if I'm like, what if I should do this instead? I will open another document and I'll write like I chose that instead. And I'll, either it will work and that's what I want to do and I put it in the main document, or I know now that that's not the way I want to go. So I can go back.
Very, very cool.
That's a good idea.
My advice is to try it. And then if you hate it, double space, start again.
I love it. Okay, shameless self-promotion time. Where do people find you on social media and your books?
All right. So you can find me online at octoberksanterelli.com. And I do have a books page on there where you can find all of the buy links for all of my currently published works. I am also on TikTok at OK Writes, WRITES. And I'm on Instagram at OK Writes, but it's O_K_Writes.
Very cool. Thank you so much for being on the show with us. It's been so amazing having you.
Thank you for having me.
Yay.
It's been awesome.
Absolutely. Okay, guys, this has been Drinking with Authors. I've been your host, Erica Lance. My co-host today has been the amazing Danielle Orsino. Do not forget to like and subscribe. Leave us a review. I remembered because I have a post-it, by the way, Danielle, right there that tells me.
I'll take it.
Yeah, to say it. And we'll see you guys next time.